For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Asia markets actually relatively quiet this morning. The big interest there is what will the new governor of the Bank of Japan actually decide about interest rate policy there. It's expected that it will remain loose for some time. However, people are looking towards that, investors in particular, looking towards that to think to themselves, when is he going to plot a course for tightening, which will probably follow. There's an interesting snippet out of China. I'm going to talk about the Meta results slightly later on as far as the US is concerned. But certainly, China's been helping Meta's much better than expected first quarter results as a result of advertising in China, which is actually quite high. China, and this, now again, what we tend to look at are these kind of external ideas about China rather than relying on what their government says. And it's clear that this one increase in advertising. Secondly, China's companies are looking to expand abroad, and thirdly, we're guessing that actual supply chain costs are coming down, which is good for the global economy. Samsung, the South Korean, the largest manufacturer of microchips in the world, has noted a 95% drop in profits. Again, investors are not too worried about this. They completely understand why. The company's being very forward in saying that actually this is down to a lack of demand, but still, it's a figure worth noting. As far as the US is concerned, basically the guess is, I mean, apart from Meta and Microsoft, which beat estimates, and again, which I've talked about those, and certainly the pandemic slowdown in China is having an effect, certainly as far as the United States is concerned. United States market worried about maybe a recession, maybe the usual kind of worries about where interest rates are going. So basically, not feeling an enormous amount. They got big tech results which were up yesterday. However, the general feeling about a global slowdown is enough to push sentiment down there. We're also noting that Amazon is starting to it's continuing its big cuts. We think 9,000 in total, but here's 3,000 people in the United States, Canada, and Costa Rica getting their terms of notice actually read out to them. In the UK, now, the thing about the UK, again, something which I need to bring to your attention is the fact that the competition authorities in the UK have put a ban on Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Now, you may say, well, why would Microsoft care about that? Well, Microsoft, the competition authorities are very worried about a huge market competition coming from Microsoft, and that's also reflected not just in the UK but in Europe, and the Fed is concerned about this too. Microsoft's initial response to this is that the UK is closed for business as a result of that ruling. So we'll see how this goes. Microsoft, of course, will appeal. CBI, now again, the CBI is this organisation, the boss's organisation. You know about the problems it's been having with the allegations and so on. The new DG, a lady called Rain Newton-Smith, who was originally a chief economist there, is saying that there's going to be root and branching. It probably will be renamed. What that name is going to be, nobody knows, but she's got a month to bring forward some of the improvements to the UK at the moment. In the UK itself, the cost of living is rising, and 35 to 44-year-olds, the sort of people in general kind of younger middle age, are resorting to formal methods of debt to make ends meet, not so much the bank of mum and dad, but basically going to credit cards and going to banks and loans to make ends meet during the cost of living crisis. And one of the staples of a packed lunch, as far as the UK is concerned, the good old cheese sandwich. What we're seeing there is a huge increase in prices there for bread, cheese, butter or margarine, depending on what you put in it. The importance for this is that it affects a lot of school kids, actually, who have the cheese sandwich as a packed lunch or part of their packed lunch. And some parents are actually saying, do you know what, we'll have school meals, because even doing that actually saves money. And staying in the UK, BP is facing a lot of pressure from shareholders over its green targets. Now, these are not necessarily, excuse me, private shareholders. These are pension funds. This is probably more appetite. BP said that it would be going green to 35 to 40% of its activities by the end of at the end of this decade, by 2030. Now its target is 20 to 30%, and a lot of pension funds, including university salary ones and also civil service pension funds, are actually saying no, and they're voicing a great deal of disapproval over BP apparently reneging on its targets. As far as oil's concerned, crude WTI, we're looking at sort of low 70s really, as far as that's concerned. All the usual complaints, all the usual problems about a global economy slowing and all the rest of it, again, which we'll no doubt hear over the next few weeks. But as far as gold's concerned, well, it kind of likes a bit, as you'll appreciate, a bit of financial risk, and moving into record territory, it's expected within the next few days. That's the global view.
Right, real quickly, one of the biggest problems in the UK as we speak today, I think the Bank of England was speaking, or somebody from the Bank of England was speaking yesterday, is a core inflation problem. And that is not abating. And that is also feeding into that cost of living crisis. And there's no hang of it yet, because that's the bulk of the problem. The core inflation not abating, as a surge in the core inflation. What's your take on that?
I have worse for you, actually. I reported yesterday that the chief economist of the Bank of England, a gentleman called Hugh Pill, said words to the effect of that we ought to accept the fact that the cost of living is rising. Now, this is what we would call a sort of very tin-eared approach to what's going on. Here's a man who earns 6 times the average wage. There's no question that maybe, the Bank of England stoked inflation. There's absolutely no question about that. Maybe they acted in a timely manner or didn't. That's open to question. But the fact that they poured petrol on asset prices and also kept interest rates low, and for somebody like that to say that we should be used to the rising cost of living, when we should be used to feeling slightly poorer, when he is a civil servant and earns 6 times the average wage. I mean, I have to say, that's caused immense anger within the UK. Never mind the cost of living, never mind where inflation is going. As I said to you before, I think inflation will fall towards the end of the year, but it's nothing to do with the Bank of England. It's nothing to do with politicians. It's just the rate of price rises that will fall out of the equation, and inflation will be seen to fall by the end of the year, very probably. Nothing to do with anybody actually doing it. It's just a fact of life. That's what will happen. Will the cost of living remain expensive? Will cheese sandwiches remain expensive? Yes, of course they will.
Well, First Republic, the U.S. bank, are we likely to witness another bank collapsing in the U.S.? Shares in that bank, are falling by about 95%. Despite the influx of about $30 billion from some biggest banks into First Republic. And then secondly, according to data from SWIFT, the Chinese currency has now overtaken the dollar for the first time. And Argentina is even going to pay for Chinese imports using the yuan. Is it something that anybody should be excited about, or the dollar is still far ahead?
No, I think that there is a general move to de-dollarize international payments, and the people are looking towards the Chinese currency because it's supported by a very powerful central bank, the People's National Bank of China. And I think I see that there's the way things are going. I'm not saying that people will rapidly move out of the dollar. I see the dollar as being one of those international currencies, as it always has been. And my feeling about this is, if you're walking in downtown, wherever it may be, and you've got a fistful of dollars, then people will take notice. Cabs will accept that. bars will accept that as well. I don't think the same can be said for the Chinese national currency. I'm sure though it will happen without question. As far as the United States is concerned, I feel as though the Fed is still looking at wage growth and so on, and we think that it may have reached peak inflation, but whether or not what effect that has on the Fed's interest rate policy, we'll probably find out in May and the minutes of that meeting.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Oddiri joins us.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Lots to discuss today. Let's quickly getting to it. Transcorp PLC, the conglomerates listed on the NGX, had their annual general meeting yesterday. Bosun Amofaye, of the anchor of the Arise Exchange, which you can catch 7 p.m. weekdays, he sat down with Mr. Tony Elumelu, the chair of Transcorp, talked about a number of things. One of the things he mentioned was that they're going to list one of their power subsidiaries on the NGX in 5 years. He says that right now there needs to be more done with power infrastructure before they will get on the NGX. So that's something that Bosun was able to chorus out of him, because a lot of people have been talking about, when are you going to list this company, spin it off and put your power assets on the public exchange so that, the everyday Nigerian can buy into the future of this company. So that was one. But the more juicy part was when Bosun asked him about Femi Otedola, the billionaire, buying into Transcorp, and he had a very rosy response. Here's what he said.
First, Femi Otedola is my very good friend.
That's good to know.
There are only two people I follow on the Instagram, my wife and Femi Otedola. That tells you the level of friendship that we have. And it's a man
you got to follow Arise.
Yeah.
You have to follow Arise.
Okay, I will consider that. My team will advise. But he's a man I admire and I respect, and he's a friend. In fact, we actually call ourselves brothers. So I welcome Femi's, I call him FO or Otedola. I welcome his investment in Transcorp. Yeah. That is what we want. I mean, come on. People get sentimental and emotional at times for no reason.
But two of you are in similar business. He's into power business, you're into power business as well.
And what's wrong? There can be cross-holdings. Abroad, or even in Nigeria, we go on international roadshows. What do? We go talk to investors to say, please come and invest in our companies. I'm happy to see an indigenous active investor community. I want to see, and I'm happy that Femi is investing locally, and he should be commended for that. And I also welcome his investment in Transcorp, because the more people show interest in the activities, in the performance of the company, the more people invest in the company, the better for all shareholders. You want to make your stock investors toast. And I am happy that Transcorp is becoming investors toast. If you remember, Bosun, about 10 years ago, before we took over Transcorp, people were not interested in Transcorp. Even people who owned shares. When I wanted to buy over Transcorp, people who owned shares of Transcorp, they won't find their certificate because they lost confidence in the company. Today, under our leadership, Transcorp has consistently, 5 years over now, paid dividend every year. It never happened. You saw the company before. There's market capital appreciation for the company. So when friends and investing public come to invest in company like this, it's a validation. It tells you that they believe in your story, they believe in your vision, they believe in your management, they believe in your leadership, they believe in your competence. That is what has been demonstrated. And I like my friend to come on board. I like the fact that he's on board, and I look forward to working with him to take Transcorp to greater heights.
All right, so he says, welcome aboard. His investment in the company is a testament to how well run it is. Now, Otedola is taking the approach of an activist investor. Activist investors see potential in companies and pretty much when they take positions, they're saying this company isn't as well run as it should be and could be better. You heard Mr. Olumino talking about the market capitalization. Let's take a look at some numbers here. I wish I had put up the assets, but it's all good. We'll do market cap first. So if you look at the market capitalization of Geregu PLC and Transcorp. Geregu's market cap is about 800 billion naira. Transcorp PLC's market cap is about 119 billion as at yesterday's closing price. So Geregu's market cap, despite the fact that it has less assets. So here's the thing, the market cap of Geregu PLC is about almost 6 times that of Transcorp PLC, despite the fact that Transcorp PLC's assets, about 442 billion, are 2.5 times bigger than Geregu PLC's assets of 174 billion. So you've got Geregu with smaller assets, which is just power, and you've got Transcorp with assets in hotels, power, and so on the like, and yet the market cap is much, much less. So his position is, I'm getting in here to try to change things because I feel that this company could be much, much bigger than what it actually is. So that's, so on the surface, okay, thank you, we finally got that. So 119.91 billion for Transcorp on the left, and you've got Geregu Power PLC 807 billion. So there is a massive gap. Meanwhile, the company on the left, Transcorp PLC, your assets are 442 billion as of the end of the 2022 financial year, twice as much as Geregu's assets of 174 billion. So the thing is, the market cap should reflect that. I mean, the stock price of Transcorp has been floating about 1 naira for quite a while, a little over 1 naira. It's shot up now past 2 naira 15 kobo. So Geregu's stock price is about 333 naira. So there's that big difference to where the larger company is in terms of market capitalization, stock price, and what it could be doing is not on the same level as the much smaller company, which is where the activist investor is coming from. So that's all in play and in the mix as we're moving forward. By the way, he is a shareholder now, but Otedola wasn't part of the AGM. Apparently what we hear is that they were shut out. Now there's some
why did that happen?
well, so let me explain. The thing is, there's a shareholder role for the, okay, so two of you are assuming that both of you are shareholders in Transcorp. I bought in at the first quarter of this year, 2023, but your AGM is for full year 2022. He hadn't bought in at that time. Okay. So theoretically, you can say that only those shareholders who were, in the company as at 2022 were the ones allowed. But then they could have been allowed to let him be part of it, but then I hear he had some, hot things to say with some statements, which so he wasn't allowed in. But at the next AGM, he has to be allowed there, and it's understood that he has to, get some board seats. All right, so let's move on to the Deposit Bank of Nigeria. They were also looking at their 2022 performance, and the Deposit, did I say the Deposit Bank? Development Bank of Nigeria, the DBN. They have said that they disbursed 631 billion naira over the course of 2022 to 313,000 SMEs. I said, okay, let's do a breakdown of what this means. If you look at this SME disbursement, 631 billion divided by 313,000 SMEs gives you roughly 2 million per SME over the course of the year. An SME that has 4 employees, that has maybe is paying them 50,000 naira per month, has a wage bill of 200,000 naira. That 200,000 naira wage bill over the course of 1 year times 12 months is 2.4 million naira. So, I mean, they're doing the best that they can, right? And you've got 39 to 40 million SMEs and only 313,000 were able to get this disbursement. It tells you that
shortfall of capital.
Shortfall of capital, thank you, sir. So, and also credits. These SMEs need a revolving line of credit. So again, this is something, and we've had the chief economist of the Development Bank on the Global Business Report. Great guy, very smart. He's talked about supporting SMEs, but there's just more that needs to be done when you break down the numbers and take a look at what they're getting. But a lot of deals are being signed. NNPC, I believe, they're trying to improve the amount of gas supply in the nation. So Melekiari signed an MOU with Golar. Golar is a Norwegian company that's into gas, and apparently they're going to be setting up, the MOU is for them to set up a plant here in Nigeria that's going to increase the amount of liquefied natural gas in the country. As you know, Nigeria's LNG is doing very well, but they are being coerced to try to redirect what is supposed to be exported out of the country back here because of the low amount of supply of gas at home. And the Bureau of Statistics recently released a gas report where you've seen double-digit growth in the price of gas. So the average Nigerian is getting squeezed because there's low supply of gas and prices are rising. More deals being signed. The African Development Bank, Akiume Additional, I mean, he is just crisscrossing discussing across the world. With Japan's International Cooperation Agency, they signed a $350 million loan agreement, and this loan agreement is supposed to support private sector players in Africa. So he got that deal there. They're going to try to disburse this money for the private sector across Africa. Remember, the African Development Bank spring meetings is coming up in Egypt in next month, so lots to be discussed there. What else is going on? I believe the national, you guys are going to love this, at NANS, the Students Association, Southwest Zone, you knew there was going to be a reaction to this multi-choice price hike. So they've given them a 7-day ultimatum. If not, they say they're going to close their offices or something like that. And then if we take a look at the price hikes, you'll see that across the board, I think about, it's so 16%, I think an average of minimum of 16% increase in their bouquets, 18.6% max is what you're seeing there. So they're saying that, look, if you don't reverse this, we'll close down your offices. I don't know if they can do that. That's our update across Africa.
A lot has to be said. So I have always looked at the great potential of Nigerian companies, and I've always seen that they are not hitting, at that margin where they are.
Okay, you mean Transcorp, right?
Yes,
okay.
Transcorp.
Yeah.
And if we take a shake-up, we're okay for it. That's the position I took, the very first
It's a free market, right?
It's a free market because we need to be able to push the envelope. And I feel very sad when I juxtapose the great potential we've got in this country against other nations like India, that we saw the accelerated growth of India.
Apple opened 2 stores. Tim Cook flew to India.
You get, and all of this accelerated growth happened really under Modi.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many years has Modi been there now? 6 to 8 years?
Yeah, just about, yeah.
So it's all really under Modi that India started to push the envelope so much. And you can see what they've been able to do. And pretty much just like us, they've got a great diaspora, we've got a great diaspora.
Population,
yeah. Oh, obviously they've got more population. I mean, Reliance Group does over 200 billion market cap.
Dollars,
US dollars.
Yeah.
But when you look at Transcorp, and that's why when Femi Otedola injected in, yes. And Tony Olumelu said, I've got no qualms with it. They're very good friends. So let's see how that pounds are. Mine is for the best of the company, but there should also be transparency.
Of course.
I don't see any reason why somebody that bought major shares like that should not have been given at least a seat
at the
in that meeting.
AGM,
And let it bring his own people in. It didn't have to generate a lot, especially for the fact that Tony Olumelu said both of them are friends.
Indeed.
So it's for the best. If we can grow both companies, if Geregu can, I want companies to be over trillions.
Thank you, sir.
Take, for instance, the fact that the two biggest companies that are over 4-5 trillion in market cap,
Telcos.
MTN and Airtel, telcos. It's still very paltry. I want at least average companies in Nigeria to be over 10-15 trillion. I want market cap to even be benchmarked against USD. I want the first Nigerian 200 billion, 300 billion market cap company. And it goes back to the credit we're talking about. Look at what the fabulous job DBN is doing. But that access to credit is still very low.
Indeed.
And all of this is also tied around the devaluation of our currency. And that is what is invariably happening, why DSTV is hiking rates, and a lot of people don't get. So NANS is not that DSTV just like to hike rates. But when you look at the market condition and our currency outplay, everything is down for Nigeria. And that's why the next president of Nigeria must lift Nigeria up, because Nigeria is on its knees as we speak.
Well, first let's start with multi-choice and the hike in prices.
Yes.
Where nobody likes to pay higher subscription rates. And this is not new. Last year, when multi-choice said they were going to raise subscription rates, this was how people kicked.
Indeed.
Not just students, most of the subscribers. Even government kicked. They ended up, the CEO of multi-choice ended up facing the panel at the National Assembly. But the argument that they are putting on is that pay-per-view is not sustainable and that it will be expensive for them to run. And then in addition to all the points made by the CEO about taxation, about difficult operating environment and the cost of doing business generally. But what they have done this time around is to say, well, if you can pay a year ahead, then of course, you can still pay the old rates. But I think what is important is just to encourage competition and also encourage a more enabling environment for ease of doing business within Nigeria, so that we don't keep having this back and forth. As for Transcorp, well, I think that Mr. Tony Elumelu said all the right things. He says he welcomes investment because investment will add value to shareholders. I think that's important. And especially commended Otedola for investing locally. I think that's also, very important. The more people show interest in the local market, the more value that we can get. And you were talking about the activist investor. Yeah, Kalaikan, right?
Yes, sir.
When he saw that Elon Musk was going to buy Twitter, he moved in there. He made profit, but he also added value in terms of the appreciation of the stocks for Twitter almost immediately. And that's the same thing we've seen in Transcorp, where the value of the shares has gone up by about 9.76% since Otedola moved in there. So the more the merrier, great wealth, great prosperity for the good of shareholders.
Actually, 158%.
Is it 158%?
So from 1 naira to 2 point something naira.
Exactly.
It's now 2.95.
Yeah, exactly.
2.95 naira.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.